Greetings, and thank you for joining us tonight for the reading of Christ's letters. We're on letter 2, and I will tell you where we're beginning. And I really thank you for joining us. We have great times of conversation and discussion when we read these letters together, and decided to give us more freedom in what we say. We decided not to record them. But for those who have listened to recordings in the past, I want to honor you and continue to bring the teachings of these fabulous letters from Christ directly to us. So I'll tell you where we're beginning, and then we'll have a meditation, and then I'll read letter 2. Okay, so the paragraph you're looking for is, I told them I could not promise them any earthly reward for their help in spreading the gospel of good news. Sorry, I've been meditating, and I just did another recording, and I'm still basically high on this past weekend. This weekend was Good Friday, where we read the Jesus experiences, firsthand experiences in the desert, and that was awesome to go there, and then read the paragraph on when Jesus died and ascended into the light and love, and he explains that. So that was a real blessing. And then Easter Sunday, my wife Thelma, also a religious science minister, gave a lesson on Easter that was just so very, very powerful. And then last night, we have a group that gets together, and we read a letter from January 3rd of 2016 from Sananda, a channeling. And that was acknowledging that we already are the Christ. Christ put itself as the center of a circle of meditators and said, I am the center of this circle. Come and join me here. And, I just felt the hearts just open. So I'm kind of on that stumbly. Oh, and then I just had a meditation, a little continuation of my sissy story. And these things you can get at Chapel in the Sky at AOL.com. And our desire for 2018 by December 31st is to see peace on earth. So I'm doing everything I can to do my part with no attachment, no judgment. If it takes 2019, I'm okay with that, but I'm putting my efforts into 2018, and I'll put my efforts into until I see the peace on earth that I believe Jesus wanted us to have. So, and these letters are the how to do it. So, okay. So again, I'll try to read this paragraph again. Well, you'll hear it on the recording anyway. I'm going to tell you to go up 2 paragraphs. So the paragraph that you're looking for begins with, they had much to lose. Their standing in society as super hardworking young men, their reputation as tradesmen and artisans, their loss of income, and biggest obstacle of all, the prophet's anger and rejection by their families. What would they receive in return? So that's where we're going to begin. On the recording, what I'm giving you is a paragraph, so I'll go up 2 paragraphs from that, okay? So if you're reading from Christ Returns, Reveal Startling Truth, it begins with 86, page 86, paragraph 3, and then go up 2 paragraphs to paragraph 1. If you're reading from Christ Returns, Speaks His Truth, and that's from the published document, the book form, okay? That's page 95 at the very bottom of the page. If you're reading from Christ Letter 2, the second draft, which I attached to the my emails, I choose that one because that's one that you actually download from the website. So if you're reading from that one, it's page 60 and paragraph 6. And if you're reading from the draft before that one, if you happen to download it before the second draft was uploaded, that's page 13, paragraph 5. And if you're reading from the original manuscripts that I love going back to the days in February of 2006 when I first was introduced to the letters, and the energy that was there, the intimacy with the recorder, and kind of a group of us like I have now on Tuesday nights, was just very high and very wonderful. And when I see the original manuscript, it takes me back to the feeling, the experience of that time with the letters, because it was so fresh and new. Like, wow, it's finally here, you know? So if you're reading from the original manuscript, it is letter 2, and it's page 17, paragraph 6. And if you downloaded the ebook that's just called Christ, that contains all the letters, the articles, and the 2 following messages from publication, first publication, that's page 70 and paragraph 1. So I will take this time to bring my energy back to that space. So let's just go into the stillness and silence. I can't tell you or me how not to think. I just know how to have no thought. How to just be still. How to have the emotions just in calm and peace, serenity. In this time and space, there's nothing to fear. There's only the oneness of the universe within us. And in the stilling of our minds, we open ourselves to hear its thoughts instead of the human chatter. And so this is the connection that we make right here and now. We connect the individualized I am consciousness within the universal I am consciousness. But there's an I am consciousness, our mindset, that is specifically and directly our own. It does our bidding. It creates our thoughts, our wants, our beliefs, our disbeliefs, our doubts, our fears. It creates everything. It's our own personal. And this personal could be thought of a cell with all the other cells of humanity in an organism we call mankind, humankind. And this organism is becoming healthier and healthier because of our presence and allowing the Christ consciousness presence to be available through our awareness. We listen to it for guidance. We listen to it for resolution. We listen to it for resolve of struggle. We listen to it in time of conflict. We listen to it in the time of nothingness. To just be in the stillness and silence. Allow it to share anything. It's always speaking. In the stillness and silence, we can hear it. Because it's in that being still that we recognize I am God. And so with this connection made, we now are grateful for Christ bringing us Jesus' experience of his life. It's like Jesus' autobiography. And so I give thanks for the directness. I give thanks for each of us being together. I'm just grateful for this time. So I'll take a drink and we'll begin with reading. So they that Christ is talking about here is Jesus' disciples. And this is very much written in the first person as if Jesus is actually telling the story. They, my disciples, had much to lose. Their standing in society as sober, hard-working young men, their reputation as tradesmen and artisans, their loss of income, and biggest obstacle of all, the probable anger and rejection by their families. What would they receive in return? I told them I could not promise them any earthly reward for their help in spreading the gospel of good news. I had no doubt at all that wherever we went, we would be given food and shelter and would be well received by the people. I could only promise them the truth, that the Father knew their needs and would fulfill them and keep them healthy. I could also promise them that as they turned to the Father and trusted the Father every step of the way, they would be happy in a way they had never been happy before. They would experience the kingdom of heaven themselves to the extent they set aside the demands of self and served other people. They would witness the healings, and these would increase their faith and give them the courage to endure any discomforts of the journey. So if you're reading, I just ask you to reread that and know that this is ours right here and now. And the only commitment we have to make is still the mind and listen to the Father, the Mother, whatever we want to call it. And this was how we came to start on our mission of spreading the good news of the gospel of the kingdom. I sent these young men ahead of me into the town we were to visit. As they entered it, they told the people to gather together to hear the good news of the kingdom of heaven. The people were astonished and wanted to know more about but the disciples urged them to fetch their friends and neighbors, and they would be told all about it when Jesus arrived. And there would be healing of their sick people. Excitedly, many ran to help spread the good news, and soon they were gathered together in a huge crowd. I, who had so deeply and passionately rebelled against the long-faced religious homilies threatening violence, punishments, and damnation to sinners, now walked with joy to meet these crowds. I had my good news to share with them, to brighten their day, and healing of ailments and all afflictions to gladden their lives. Whereas before, I moved amongst people selfishly and empty-handed, taking their goodwill and sometimes their handouts with little gratitude, I came now with an abundance of life-giving possibilities to everyone who is prepared to listen to my words and take action to improve the quality of their lives. I want you who are reading these pages to fully understand my position at that time, my state of consciousness after my illumination in the desert, and the persona I presented to my countrymen as Jesus. There have been so many conjectures that I'm about to give you the truth. I was born to have, when mature, a fine physique, strong equiline features, a remarkable intellect, and a love of mimicry and laughter. But like so many of you today, I took no care of my earthly talents. At the time of going into the desert, my face and manners were what you might call downgraded from what they should have been. While I had begun to examine and rebel against what I had become, my intellect had also suffered from misuse, constantly engaged in arguments and dissensions over religion and indulging in flippant speech. I made people laugh. I was liked by the men and women I mixed with, but certainly not respected. Hence the astonishment of those who had known me when I spoke to them in the synagogue in Nazareth. And that was just, I think last week we read about that. While my mother nursed me back to good health, I made powerful use of the knowledge and enlightenment given me in the desert. This restored me to the man I was meant to be. When I started my mission, I was fully aware that I was the only one with the supreme knowledge of the secrets of creation and existence itself. Therefore, I could say with perfect confidence, no one has seen, no one has heard, no one has been with the Father but me. I knew that all men believed in, I knew that all that men believed in so wholeheartedly was false, not real. I knew that what all men believed wholeheartedly was not real, but was false. I knew that I had been specially fashioned and designed by the Father for this mission. We all are. Everything that's brought us to here has brought us to here, and it's all good. I have been blessed abundantly with the physical energy, vitality of speech, and the ability to devise meaningful parables to enable me to pass on the message successfully and in a form that would never be forgotten. Besides which, I understood my fellow men so well from long association with them that I knew their fondest hopes, their most desperate fears. I knew what made them laugh and prompted them to mockery and derision of the rich and the pompous. And I knew also how deeply so many young and old suffered silently and bravely. I knew and experienced deep compassion for the populace which lived in fear, the fear of, or endured the verbal whiplash of Pharisees, and bowed down to the tax laws of the Romans. I knew how their proud Jewish spirit was bruised by the conquering Gentiles, whom they were forced to honor with their lips and hand and knee salutations, yet whom they despised behind closed doors. I knew and fully understood the lives and thinking of the populace. I had previously thought their thoughts, felt their resentments, endured their kind of anxieties in times of lack, felt powerless in the grip of the Roman governance. I now knew that none of this suffering was reality, was really necessary. Knowing as I did the reality of existence, the reality of universal God, I could clearly perceive the foolishness of the Jews in authority, who were imposing a burdensome way of life upon the populace, which was wholly erroneous and in direct contradiction of the truth of being. The situation made me deeply angry. And as I read this, I see why I'm stubborn, because this is not what we want, But Christ is telling us this is a consciousness that I was involved in, and this is the consciousness that I was before being here after the desert. And these people are seeing me now and having the conflict of who I was before. But they're hearing me. They're hearing the Christ of me. They're hearing the Father, because they're listening and I'm healing, and they believe what their eyes are showing them. Therefore, I knew I had been perfectly fashioned and honed to become a purified instrument of divine action in Palestine, driven by my passion for truth and driven by my compassion for my fellow human beings. Hence, I called myself Son of Man, because I knew exactly what mankind was up against in their daily lives. Furthermore, I had perfect confidence I could achieve my objectives of bringing truth to the people, and thus be instrumental in changing the quality of their lives. For that reason, this is why we're here tonight. This is why we come together on a weekly basis, so that we can all share in this truth and create a better quality of life for ourselves and those around us. For that reason, I thought I knew right at the outset of my mission there would be a penalty to pay for all I proposed to do: turn the known Jewish world upside down and inside out. I was prepared to face up to it, go through it, could not evade it, because I loved people with the Father love flowing through my heart and being. For Father love is the presence of giving, giving itself, with a capital I, into visible being and visible existence, and growing, protecting, nourishing, healing, and fulfilling all the needs of all creation made visible. I knew I was the Father's gift of salvation to the people, to the world. I'm going to pause for that just a moment, and I'm going to reread that paragraph, those two paragraphs, and then go on from there. This is very, very powerful for us, and I want us to really breathe it in and have it revealed that this is who we are. Furthermore, I had perfect confidence I could achieve my objectives by bringing truth to the people, and thus be instrumental in changing the quality of their lives and our lives. For that reason, although I knew right at the outset of my mission, there would be a penalty to pay for all I proposed to do. When society sees us being not controlled or not in fear of society, they get concerned because they can't control us. So they become fearful to that, because they want to control. And so we have a different control. It's like the sheep and the goats that we read. Oh, I'm sorry, that was another time. About the sheep and the goats that we will read in letter 3, that there are those who are following the inner guidance, the shepherd within us. And there are those who are haphazardly going through life like the goats on the mountains, being precarious and creating destruction on the earth instead of leaving it ready for the next generation of animals. So he knows that he's bringing this conflict to the Jews because it's a very different approach to, the suffering and the punishing God. And I was prepared to face up to it, to go through it. I could not evade it because I loved people with Father love flowing through my heart and my being. For Father love is the essence of giving itself into visible being and visible existence, and growing, protecting, nourishing, healing, and fulfilling all the needs of all creation made visible. I knew I was the Father's gift of salvation to the people, to the world. Not me, Jesus, but me, the Christ of Jesus. I'm bringing the Father. I'm bringing the truth to the world. And as they accept it, they will be in that same attitude I'm in, Jesus, am in, and therefore we're creating a difference, making a difference. So I knew I was the Father's gift of salvation to the people, to the world. Not as they supposed and taught down the centuries, salvation from the punishment meted out by an angry God to sinners, but to save people from the daily repetition of the same mistakes and wrong thinking which created their misfortunes, poverty, sickness, and misery and dis-ease. Because I loved the human race so deeply, I was prepared to teach and heal in defiance of the Jewish priests. I was prepared to die on the cross for what I had truly seen in the desert, knew with all my heart, and wanted to share to the last drop of my ability to do so. That's commitment, Kathleen Lehman had to sign a contract to join an experience, a series of rituals throughout the year. And what part of the contract was that I would be crucifiably honest. Okay, and I said that's a good term. That's a term of my impeccable integrity, and I'll take that on, just as Jesus says here. As we saw in Jesus Christ Superstar the other night, which is another part of my excitement of this time of year. But Jesus says to conquer death, you only need to die. Isn't that just giving up, just releasing it? There's no more fear, there's no more control. People can't control me when the worst they can do is take my life. If that's the worst they could do and I'm okay with that, they have no more control over me, because the worst they could do is kill me. And I can give up with fear, or I can give up with peace. I always have choice in every now moment. So anyway, Christ goes on now. He's got, if you're listening without reading, he's got a series of asterisks going along the page, blocking out this one paragraph. And what he wants us to hear, he has this in all uppercase letters. He has it bolded. This and what he's just said is very important that he wants us to hear. This is the truth behind my crucifixion, and all the rest you've heard is man-made conjecture arising out of the Jewish practice of burnt offerings in the temple. I'm sorry, no, your eyes are not playing tricks on you. Thelma came out to stop breakfast, so I was in the living room back in the office. I normally do the letters, so it's a perfect place. So I'm going to reread that last paragraph. I know it's just a second or two for you, but it's been like 10 minutes for me, so I want to go back because I definitely want to talk about it, especially after Easter was Sunday, 2 days ago, and Good Friday was 5 days ago, and Sunday night was Jesus Christ Superstar. And then last night, a group of us read a letter about who we truly are, about Christ really declaring itself within each of us. And it's just a very powerful reading. And now reading this and coming to, again, Christ talking about the myth he wants to destroy, to erase, to neutralize, to take away is the concept of being a sacrifice for sin and him being the only Son of God and on and on, all this kind of stuff. So he says often, that the crucifixion is a myth, and first not to put attention there, because the attention is on, I came to bring heaven on earth, I came to bring brotherly, sisterly love, I came to bring the Father within yourself for you to recognize that Father, so that you can live the life that I'm living with peace and joy and support in all ways, protection in all goodness. And yeah, I create the same with my fellow men, with all the women, children, and men in my life. We create the same. Them and I have this love. We're so fortunate to be in the same mindset, allowing love to live us. So I will get back to the reading. There's just a little bit to go before we finish. So I'm going to repeat because, I don't need to repeat it. So I was a gift from the Father to mankind to help them surmount their ignorance of the laws of existence and find the path of life, the true path of life, leading to the joy, abundance, and perfect wholeness of the kingdom of heaven. Again, always with them. These were the perceptions, the desires, the intentions and goals, and the thoughts which I bore within my mind and heart. This was the earthly, mental, emotional framework, clothing my spiritual consciousness hidden within the head and figure of Jesus. Here's my spiritual consciousness channeled into the above forms of thought and feeling, which impelled me to set out on a 3-year journey to bring to the people what I truly believed was final rescue from their own blind thinking and feeling which were creating their own troubled lives. I truly believe that if only the people could be shown all that had been given to me to understand, they would realize their past folly and would make every effort to change their thinking and put foot to the path of life leading to the kingdom of heaven. To this end, I was prepared to give my life. And again, there's only joy in that because once we accept our death, we can live. We can't accept our death, we have that fear hanging over us. I like freedom, so I have no fear. Because of the wrong interpretation placed on my mission by Jewish teachers, my true message had been distorted out of recognition. And the purpose of these letters is to bring to the people, you and me, of the new age, of our age, the truth of what I really spoke to the crowds in Palestine. That's why I call it the autobiography of Jesus, because that's what Christ is doing for us. Therefore, returning to my recounting of those days, let me take you back to a special day which bore fruit amongst the listeners and made a lasting impression in the minds of my disciples. Hence, for me also, it was a particularly meaningful day. I took time off from the pressure of people to go into the hills to pray and meditate, to recharge my spiritual batteries by making a deep, strong, more powerful connection with the Father within me. They went away with no distraction. He didn't have cell phones and have all the stuff we have to distract. He just had people. But he went away. It shows us that, even Jesus, take him off the pedestal. That Jesus was still human and still spiritual. As spiritual as he was, he still had human aspects. And there were times when he would probably just get tired or frustrated at times, maybe. There's still a lot of disbelief around him. It's not all easy for him. He's got all the naysayers out there probably demonstrating at times if they did that in those days. So it's important to know that we need to have our time. We need to take time to do nothing and feel good about it. And anytime I do nothing, which is a lot, I feel good about it. So it's important to take these breaks in life. The connection, I'm going to reread it because I want to take us back to that connection. I took time off from the pressure of the people to go into the hills and pray and meditate, to recharge my spiritual batteries by making a deep, strong, more powerful connection with the Father within me. This connection was so rapidly obscured within my consciousness when I was busy amongst the crowds that I was exhausted. Arriving in the cave I used within that area, I pulled out the pallet hidden under the rock and lay it down to sleep. Instead of sleep, however, I felt the immediate inflow of divine life, Father, and the tiredness was dissolved as my body was charged with power, which is a creative source of all being. Close your eyes if you're not driving. I was lifted in consciousness into golden light. As I traveled upwards within this light, it suddenly changed to the purest white. And I knew that in consciousness, I was now at the portals of the equilibrium, which is the eternal, the universal, the infinite dimension beyond all conception of human mind. I observed the light, but was not of it, nor was it powerfully within me, since this was the God dimension of the void, and no form of the universal equilibrium. But it communicated with me, and infused me with its glowing love. It impressed in me yet again that it was the creating perfection, healing process, love. And this love is a governor of all existence. I knew that wherever there was